Today I'm going to be making a gooseberry cream pie. I'm not going to show you the entire pie. I'm not going to do the filling part of it right now in this video. What I wanted to do was just kind of show you how to make the very flaky crust part of the pie, and then you can use whatever fillings that you want to use. I might do the filling part in a separate video, but for this part of it, it's just going to be a flaky pie crust. And these are my ingredients here. I'm going to be using like 2.5 cups of flour, be using a teaspoon of salt, be using 6 tablespoons of unsalted butter, 3/4 of a cup of vegetable shortening. Use Crisco back there. I'm not endorsing any of this. And then be using about 1/2 cup of water. And it's very important for a flaky pie crust to be using chilled ingredients. So all of the ingredients that I'm going to be mixing together, I'm actually going to put in the refrigerator for probably 3 or 4 hours to make sure everything is thoroughly chilled before I mix it all together. What happens if it's not chilled is that your shortening and your butter will melt down too quickly as you're mixing the pie dough up, and that will flatten out your pie dough because it's actually the separation of the flour caused by the chilled shortening and the chilled butter that makes your pie crust flaky. You'll see right up front there, I've got my butter, and it's chilled, and it's going to be cubed, so it'll actually mix together a little bit more evenly when I do start doing the pie crust and mixing all that together. So I'm going to put all of my ingredients, as you see them right here in a bowl, and I'm going to set the whole bowl in the refrigerator for about 3 or 4 hours, and then we'll come back and we will mix it. Okay, so all of my ingredients have been chilling now, so it's time to pull it out of the refrigerator. I said I packed them all in here together just so I would have it, and they would all be chilled at the same temperature. I've got 2.5 cups of flour. I've got my some butter that I had actually cubed into 3/8 inch cubes. I've got my shortening, the 3/4 cup of shortening that I had pre-measured in here, leveled it out. I've got my salt, I've got my pastry cutter, and actually I had chilled my measuring spoons as well. So what I'm going to wind up doing is I'm going to put the 2.5 cups of flour in a bag here, and then I'm going to add the teaspoon of salt to it, and then I'll mix it up just kind of like a shake and bake. Okay, so the reason that I put it in the bag here, this is just the flour and the salt, but I wanted to have it a very uniform mixture here, so you don't have little pockets of salt, because when you put the shortening and the butter in, it will tend to bind whatever's adjacent to it, and it won't mix that well. So if you have it mixed up very uniform before adding that, you're much better off. Okay, so here's the salt and the flour mixed together. I'm going to just pour this out into the mixing bowl here. Okay. Then the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to, let's get that leveled out there. So then the next thing that I'm going to do is put in my 6 tablespoons of butter that I had cubed up here, and it's actually I want to spread that out as much as I can. And the bigger your mixing bowl, the more spread out obviously it will be in here. Okay, so that's the 6 tablespoons of butter. And then I've got 3/4 of a cup of shortening here, which I'm going to do the same thing, just kind of slice off pieces of it and spread it around in here. Maybe, or maybe not. There's probably an easier way of doing this. It's called using 2 knives, but I've only got one here. If you had an extra hand, it would be helpful, wouldn't it? So we just kind of, yeah. Okay, now we've got all of our vegetable shortening in there. We use the butter in there for the flavor, and the shortening is actually what you want to use. It creates more of a flakiness. Some people use only butter, but the problem with butter is that it's got a lower melting point than shortening. 98.6 degrees body temperature is what butter melts at, and then your shortening melts at anywhere from, I don't know, 115 up to 120, 122 degrees. But for flakier pie crusts, if you used only butter, it would come out a little bit flat, just simply because butter has got some animal fats in it, but it's also got a lot of water in it. And your water, as obviously when the butter melts down, your water tends to permeate into your mixture there, and then that will make your pastry flat here. So then you use a pastry cutter. This one's a wire one. They make some that's actually got some blades in it, which are a little bit sturdier, and it makes it a little bit better than the wire ones here. So then we just cut it in. And you want to cut it into the consistency of where it's just kind of a crumble, kind of like maybe a little bit bigger than what grape nuts. It would be like about pea-sized, maybe, something like that. And so we're going to spend, oops, try not to get it all over the table and make a mess. And so I'm going to spend some time doing this, and I'll get back with you in just a moment.
So this is what it's going to look like when you're done cutting in all of the shortening and the butter. You see it's nice and granulated. A few larger bean-sized chunks in there, but it's nice and granulated. And this is what we add our ice water to. I got a 1/2 cup of ice water, and we just put it in just a tablespoonful at a time, making sure that we mix it in real well and we don't get any little sticky spots in there. So you're going to be doing a lot of stirring. And you want to use ice water on that, again, just to keep it all chilled down so that the fats don't melt in there. And then when we get all of that done, get it stirred in real good, I'll cut what I have in the bowl here in half, and half of that will be reserved for the top crust. I'll just put that back in a baggie, and we'll put that top crust back into the refrigerator. And we'll roll that out later. But for the bottom crust, what I do is I just take my crumbles here, and rather than roll it out and press it out, which would lose flakiness, I just take these crumbles and spread them out in my pie plate and press them in with my thumb, so that what we have in the end is just a nice even crust. We roll that with the thumbs up to the edges. So we have this nice crust, which we'll put in the oven and bake at 375 for about 20 minutes with the edge protector on. So after it's baked, what I'll do is I'll take my other crust that I reserved for the top. And yes, I will have to roll this one out, but we want to be very careful with it. We don't want to over roll it. So we roll it from the inside towards the edges rather than from the edges towards the inside, because you will overwork it and it will lose its flakiness. So we'll get it out here just about to the right size. I'll measure that out. I think that'll probably just about do it. And we'll take that and we will put our filling in our other crust. And then we'll take the top crust and very carefully lift it up and put it on top of the pie. Now with this, I'll press it down. I'll trim it out, the edges off, and then press the edges with a fork. My special fork came from a naval officer's dining room. Don't tell him that. It's not the fanciest. Like I said, I don't have my serrator for the edge, so I'll use my fork on this one. And when I get it all done, I'll put this in the oven again at 375 for about 20 minutes, at which time I'll pull it out and cut the vents on it in the top. And I'll pull the edge protector off at that point too. And when it's done, it's another 40 minutes in the oven, and this is what it looks like. Perfectly flaky crust.